A composer will always be remembered, but a performer must be forgotten. A performer leaves his shoes at the door. What then will the next performer do with them? Frank McCall was a composer, a gifted, nationally awarded architect whose vision and drive for excellence continues a century after his birth to make our Colquitt County home a more gracious, beautiful, and comfortable place to live and raise our families. As gifted as he was in the field of architecture, Frank McCall was also equally skilled in the interior elements of style and decorating. His innate sense of attention to detail made him a master in selecting lighting, colors, fabrics, porcelain, rugs, paintings, and other decorative furnishings. A longtime associate and fellow architect Neil Turner said, Frank McCall's gift was in architecture, and he laid the foundation for all who came after him. And that foundation was laid in Frank's artistic soul early on by the simple architectural brilliance of the ancient Greeks. He loved their sense of perfect balance, elegant forms beautifully proportioned to reflect the harmony and order of the universe.
Frank was truly a purist and really would go back to the Greek styles of architecture, classical but broken into different periods of time. You had a low country style, you had plantation style, you had Georgian style, and each one of those styles would be a little bit different depending on the era. Classical in the sense of the purity of the style that he was working in.
The genius of Frank was proportions. He could take a house and make the windows fit the door, fit the chimney, fit the light, fit the porch, and he was a genius at it.
You know, some people can have a tin ear when it comes to music, and some people are virtuosos. It was a very genteel kind of architecture. You can have classical architecture that's very cold and unwelcoming, very institutional, but his always felt very much like somebody lived there.
When you go to these homes, you are going to see the attention to detail. You'll see the baseboard that's just going to be the right height, and you'll see a complementary chair rail, you'll see complementary hardware, light fixtures. It's all going to be put together in beautiful harmony.
His firm did 20 houses at Sea Island, and they're pretty easy to spot. Just because of that great sense of proportion, you will recognize a Frank McCall house. Maybe his finest houses might have been the smaller homes, the ones where he could really concentrate on details, and he certainly did build beautiful, elegant homes, but he could build a small home and just, it was a masterpiece.
Of course, any house that you go by, well, it's a Frank McCall. I mean, that's like saying a Lafite bottle of wine or something. But I do like the distinction of knowing the most inexpensive house that he has built, ours that we grew up in, and then he built Rankin Smith's house here in Atlanta. Rankin Smith could have had any architect in the world to do his house, and he chose Frank McCall.
I learned to do exactly what the architect says and do it just exactly like he wanted to do it. If I had any question asked, I'd go by the office. And he'd sit down, we'd open the plans up or whatever. Everything in his house is special made, inside and outside. The molds in the ceilings and outside cornices. That's the reason some of the houses cost a lot, but still, everything just perfect.
I remember at some point somebody had said that they thought maybe Frank did the house so he could do the interiors, because he and Corbett Tucker, they did all the interiors and they picked out a lot of things. It was very much a part of the way the house was designed, was you knew people were going to live there.
Julianne and I said, we're going to have fun building a house. It's the biggest investment we'll ever make, and Frank's our friend, and we're just going to make it fun. And so we did. It turned out to be one of the best experiences we've ever had. It was a joy. And that's why we've always liked our home so much, and always been proud to say it's a Frank McCall home.
I wanted a French house. After a year's consultation work, Frank, along with his other architects, had designed the perfect house that suited our needs, then and even up to this present day. With my love of design and Victor's love of travel, We were able to buy our own accessories and furniture in many places we visited in the United States and countries abroad.
I think almost all of his clients that he did houses for, he became good friends.
Moultrie has always been known that the beautiful homes, and all of that goes to Frank McCall.
He designed the Deloach Chapel, and part of the job that an architect needs to do in designing a church is creating a space that is worshipful, that brings you closer to God.
If you look at the interior of Moultrie Presbyterian Church, its proportions, and of course in those cases it was the color and the combinations that he did. Oh, it's just breathtaking.
A lot of the commercial work that we did was traditional, like the Village, and we did some modern buildings.
Frank rejoiced in the success of others. He took great pleasure in being a mentor and teacher whose goal in life was to bring an entire generation of Colquitt County citizens into a more delightful and supportive relationship with each other. His friendship was genuine, deep, and loyal.
You know, Frank had an innate sense of what is right in lots of different aspects of life. We all know about his great skill in architecture, and he had a real fine team of architects that worked with him always, very capable folks, and he loved teaching them. He also loved teaching his friends, and they came with from multiple generations.
A lot of architects that came out of Frank's office, Jack Wilson, Charles Ryan, Vernon Ogletree, Neal, Johnny Shackelford, Roy Rankin, Corbin.
Next to my parents, he probably had more to do with influencing my life than anyone. I think everyone will agree with that.
If you just send me an invoice, I'll take care of all the costs for this. And he said, well, he said, this is my way of saying thank you to you for doing well and encouraging you to continue doing well. He said, this has been a wonderful experience. I've enjoyed watching you grow in your career. And he said, this is on me. And I said, wow, and had no idea, of course, that he would do anything like that.
He taught the social graces. He taught hospitality. By his example, he taught the big, important attribute of relationships, friendships, and how important friends are to a person's quality of life. But that was who Frank was, always a teacher.
And Frank had grown up in a very formal household. And Frank did. He just knew the right thing to do. Knew which side the silverware went on, and we had some friends that didn't know. And Frank would make sure that when they left this house, they did know. But he did it in a way that just didn't get anybody upset with him. It's just the way Frank did things.
Well, as he always said, candles and characters make for a successful dinner party. And he had plenty of both.
He would fix the flowers, and he would set out the glasses and the napkins and spoons and everything just right. And it was always perfect, and he always was the life of the party.
Oh, he was a wonderful guest. He was a wonderful guest. He would carry the conversation, and he had so many interests in so many different things. I remember his brother, he was trying to get his brother to go to the beach, John. And John said, no, I went to the beach and had a bad experience. He said, what was that? He said, Normandy.
And if he were alive now, Downton Abbey would be the way he would want to live, the way he really thinks everyone should. And he and Carson would have had a lot in common in knowing the right thing.
He would spend money that he didn't have on his friends. Oh my gosh. I know he gave my son, when my son was christened, a silver goblet that was given to him when he was christened. And he had it engraved with his initials and on the other side of Frank's initials. Now that's pretty special.
When I
was getting ready to turn 16. I was going to New York, and with some people from Moultrie, some young kids through the YMCA. And so he told me if I went to Tiffany's that I could pick out a gold watch for my 16th birthday. So sure enough, we went to Tiffany's. All these kids went into Tiffany's in New York. And so I asked to see some gold, they just didn't quite believe that I was going to be able, to pick out a bracelet watch. But I did, and I got the number. He told me to write down the number because, I wasn't going to get to take it with me. So sure enough, when I turned 16, there was my watch. And so for each of his nieces, when they turned 16, they got a watch from Tiffany's.
Mr. McCall was a tireless community activist who clearly saw the opportunity to meet human need and used his great personal creativity to bring about significant social change, which is still generating a richer quality of life 25 years after his death.
He could have chosen to live anywhere he wanted to live in Georgia or the Southeast, really. But he chose to come back home. And I think that's because he just loved his community so much. He loved the people of Moultrie. He loved the young people of Moultrie. And he tried to be sure that they learned about the nicer things. He loved his family, and he loved the Methodist Church.
Every check that came into his office would be taken by the bookkeeper, and she would immediately write a check for 15% to the Methodist Church. There are just not many people that do that sort of thing. That Frank loved his church, loved his family, and loved his community, and he gave back to all three of them. And he was a very, very generous person with time, talent, and money.
He would always pick flowers on Saturday for a Sunday school class on Sunday. And I went out with him. I'd figure out, what are we doing? And we're going out in people's yard cutting flowers. He took an interest in young people. I was one of them he took an interest in, but there are hundreds in Moultrie. And boy, when somebody was successful in life from Moultrie, he loved it. I mean, it was important.
He was worried, I think, about the next generation, as we all are, and he would bring us in to teach us the right way to do things.
The Art Center was an interesting project, and I really am appreciative of the Service League and the leadership that they provided. They thought that this Art Center should be the work of the three architects that were in Moultrie at the time. So Frank McCall and Jack Wilson and I joint ventured in this project. It again shows you how gracious Frank was, and Jack Wilson too, that we were just able to do our job and give something back to the community.
He brought in a new generation of folks that were going to be involved in the community. It's an honor and a privilege to work for the community. And Frank's the one that taught us that. Fabulous Welcome to Spring. It was a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. Frank had a passion for trying to cure cancer. And he would invite the most incredible, well-known, renowned people from all over to come to Moultrie and be here, and there would be a guest speaker. On Saturday night there was a big gala with an auction to raise money.
What he did for Colquitt County, and for all of South Georgia for that matter, was brought really important people in that field from all over America. He introduced us to people like Ms. Mary Belton and John Sweeney, the two curators of the Winterthur Museum and the very fine museum gardens there in Delaware. He brought them to Moultrie, and people like the president of Brunswick and Fees, the CEO of Scalamandre Fabrics were both here, and it gave all of us in Colquitt County a nice chance to get to know these people and to learn a lot of things that we hadn't been exposed to before. I'm reminded of the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, who, in describing her own husband, President Roosevelt, after his death, said this: "They are not dead who live in lives they leave behind." And Frank McCall touched so many people, and he influenced so many lives, and we still feel that presence and that impact of the life of Frank McCall.